What if the Montreal Canadiens, a franchise meticulously navigating a complex and patient rebuild, found themselves at the center of a massive media leak? A report from none other than Elliotte Friedman, one of the most respected insiders in the entire league, claiming a strategic move that, upon closer inspection, reveals a far more desperate reality. That's the scenario we're dissecting today. The text explicitly states that the Montreal Canadiens front office has given an absolute green light to forward Patrik Laine and his agent to independently seek a trade. The article attempts to paint this as a masterstroke, a chess maneuver by our general manager Ken Hughes, brazenly claiming he wants to free up this immense cap space to pursue major improvements for the roster before the final stretch of the season. Stop the presses immediately. Let's lay out the tactical cards on our table and separate journalistic illusion from the true, relentless financial reality of the league. First and foremost, we need to completely dismantle this fallacy of supposed major improvements at the trade deadline. The reporter writes, using the league's official calculator, that the Canadiens currently have only about $1.3 million in cap space, and that offloading Laine's monstrous contract will provide the necessary financial breathing room for the team to acquire new pieces and reinforcements on the market. Klaus, in what parallel universe is the Montreal Canadiens operating as a buyer at the 2026 trade deadline? We are not just one or two players away from lifting the Stanley Cup. The Quebec franchise is in the midst of a methodical, lengthy, and painful process of rebuilding and transition under head coach Martin St. Louis. Ken Hughes does not want to get rid of Patrik Laine's $8.7 million salary to buy an expensive rental veteran and attempt a suicidal, desperate, and utterly useless playoff run. This is video game narrative and fantasy hockey general manager talk. Kent Hughes' true corporate intention in trying to offload the Finnish forward is entirely different, much colder, and more calculated. In the brutal and complex chess game of the National Hockey League, empty cap space is the most valuable currency that exists, sometimes worth even more than prospects in certain negotiations. The Canadiens want to open up this giant financial hole to strategically act as a bank or a broker for third-party trades in the asset market. They want to have capacity and space to absorb toxic contracts, the so-called bad contracts, from financially suffocated teams desperate to compete now. By absorbing these bad contracts from other teams, the Canadiens charge a very expensive toll, usually in the form of first-round draft picks or elite prospects. This is precisely how intelligent, patient, and corporate franchises accelerate their long-term rebuilding process. Cap space is not for buying immediate roster improvements. It is solely and exclusively for buying political draft capital and building the future. Now that we dismantled the first lie, let's meticulously analyze the most dangerous and revealing smoke signal in this entire report: the formal authorization for Patrik Laine's agent to speak with other team executives. Conventional media sells this front office move as opening a door to facilitate the player's amicable departure. But our war room knows how to read between the lines and understand the body language of negotiations. When an NHL general manager calls an elite player's agent and verbally says, "Go ahead and find a team for yourself. You're free to go," that means only one thing in hockey jargon: the GM's own phone has stopped ringing. Let's be realistic. Ken Hughes certainly picked up his phone, called the 31 other executives in the league tirelessly over the past few weeks trying to push Laine's contract into some trade composition, and he most certainly received 31 resounding no's to his face. The authorization for the agent to operate freely in the market is, in fact, the white flag of surrender publicly hoisted. It is the Montreal front office confessing to the entire league: we have exhausted our options. We have absolutely failed to find any buyer willing to negotiate on our terms. So see if you can use your personal contacts in the league to save us from this terrible financial anchor. And why has the trade market for Patrik Laine evaporated so tragically and so quickly? Let's shift focus from the financial aspect for a moment and coldly examine the medical report and the physical evaluation sheet. The article cites a devastating fact. The player underwent serious core muscle surgery, the famous and dreaded procedure, in mid-October, and has not stepped on the ice for a high-intensity game since. He was operating with an initial recovery period of 3 to 4 months of painful rehabilitation. Klaus, pay close attention to the biomechanical severity of this. We are not talking about a simple finger injury or a temporary shoulder dislocation that you saw with ice and light physical therapy. The core musculature, which involve the entire abdominal belt and the lumbar region, is the absolute center of gravity and the primary torque generator for a professional ice hockey athlete. For a player exactly like Laine, who built his entire career, his fame, and his monstrous paycheck on a lethal shot, the famous devastating slap shot he introduced to the world when he was drafted second overall by the Winnipeg Jets back in the distant year 2016. The stability of the abdomen and the strength of the lumbar region are all that matter. Without explosive, perfect, and pain-free trunk rotation, his shot loses the stunning velocity and millimeter precision that differentiated him from the rest of the players in the league. He loses his main weapon for survival in the NHL. Given this, I ask you, what general manager in their right mind, in command of a team actively fighting for a conference title, will have the courage to take on a colossal $8.7 million contract for a player who has not played a competitive hockey game in almost 5 months and has just had the fundamental musculature of his trunk surgically reconstructed by a scalpel? The medical and sporting risk of this transaction is gigantic, bordering on management irresponsibility. Teams that truly go far and survive the war of attrition that of the NHL playoffs desperately need constant speed. Players who play the famous 200-foot game, who check under overwhelming pressure, who return to defend their own zone tooth and nail, and who attack the neutral zone with maximum aggression all the time. The modern tactical system demanded by head coach Martin St. Louis within Montreal already routinely requires this fluid mobility, something that Patrik Laine, due to his stature and fixed shooter playing style, always had great natural difficulty delivering. Imagine now, demanding this from a body that is returning from a long, drawn-out, and uncertain rehabilitation after deep surgical intervention in the trunk. The tactical math simply doesn't add up. In addition to this enormous biomechanical risk we have just dissected, there's the immense accounting anchor that pulls a negotiation to the bottom. The sports report accurately points out and reminds us that Laine still has one more long year of guaranteed work remaining on his contract after the end of this current season. He is not what we call a cheap rental player who quietly expires in the summer, freeing up his payroll in free agency. No, the situation is much worse. If a franchise makes a mistake of acquiring him now, its general manager is immediately committing a substantial and vital slice of its rigid salary cap for the entire next season of 2027. The article tries to soften the terrifying impact of this negotiation by casually stating that the Montreal Canadiens still have important and limited salary retention slots available in their arsenal. The text suggests that the Canadian franchise could easily hold on to a large portion of that $8.7 million to sweeten the deal and make the problem disappear. Let's detail this complex financial retention mechanism right now for our audience to understand the true insanity contained in this illusory proposal. Under the strict rules of the NHL's collective bargaining agreement, the rulebook governing the league, a team can retain a maximum of 50% of a player's total salary in any trade. If Ken Hughes is pushed to the limit and decides to apply this desperate maximum retention just to facilitate the negotiation, the Montreal Canadiens would still be obligated to pay a painful $4.35 million per year to Patrik Laine, and he would be receiving this fortune to play against Canadiens themselves, proudly wearing another team's jersey, including throughout the entire 2026 to 2027 regular season. Paying over $4 million a year for a ghost athlete who doesn't even frequent your locker room, who doesn't score points for your standings, and who consumes your cap space is an extremely bitter corporate pill to swallow. Even for a team in the midst of financial rebuild, it is the ultimate proof that the asset has lost all its value. And we cannot forget the buyer's side. Even if the Canadiens swallow this accounting humiliation and apply the maximum 50% salary retention, the team that dares to receive him would still have to magically fit the other $4.35 million into its own already overloaded payroll. Klaus, our tactical bench rigorously audits the financial statements and salary limits of all 32 franchises in the league daily. We know the truth. The truly competitive teams, the true contenders for Stanley Cup glory, are suffocated. They are operating on the edge of the financial abyss, just a few dollars from the maximum spending limit imposed by the league commissioner's office. No one, absolutely no elite general manager, has almost $4.5 million left in their wallet in the midst of the chaos of March to blindly bet on the talent of a shooter who is out of game rhythm, and whose health is under severe doubt. This inevitably leads us to the most brutal scenario of our entire dissection, an obscure corporate concept that traditional media always fears explaining to fans: the terrible discard trade, the toxic move that insiders call a cap dump. If Laine's market value is as frozen and hostile as the sad agent release move suggests, the glorious Montreal Canadiens may quickly find themselves cornered in a position where, to get rid of this gigantic contractual anchor without being stuck retaining salary for the next 2 years, they will have to pay a very high toll in valuable assets to the team that agrees to absorb the financial loss. Kent Hughes, instead of dreaming of receiving a good, promising player or an interesting draft pick in exchange for a finished athlete, may be forced and coerced by circumstances to attach a valuable second-round pick, or perhaps in a catastrophic scenario, even an untouchable first-round draft pick, sending this prize along with Laine in a package, purely and simply to convince a franchise with available space, such as perhaps the San Jose Sharks or the Chicago Blackhawks, to swallow this toxic contract. Doing this is practicing asset destruction in its purest and cruelest form. It is burning your own future to fix a mistake from the immediate past. Patrik Laine's sporting trajectory is undoubtedly one of the biggest and saddest warnings in modernized hockey about how raw talent and innate scoring instinct cannot always overcome the need for perfect tactical fit, and especially the demand for physical durability. He emerged as a true devastating phenomenon in Winnipeg, breaking youth records, setting Canadian arenas on fire, and clashing with the legend Austin Matthews in the passionate discussion about who would be the greatest scorer and a definitive face of that acclaimed draft class. His career promised the top of the sporting world. After the honeymoon on the Canadian plains, he was sent to the Columbus Blue Jackets, where he experienced a roller coaster of emotional and technical ups and downs, faced an endless series of annoying injuries, went to the extreme of needing to enter the NHL's own player assistance program to take care of his mental health, and ended up being traded to Montreal through a courageous gamble as a true resurrection project in the league. General manager Kent Hughes bet big that the historic, demanding, and vibrant environment of the Canadiens, combined with the leadership mentality of the brilliant coach Martin St. Louis, could be the perfect formula to revive the lethal killer that everyone knows still exists hidden within Laine's mind. The corporate gamble was highly valid at the time. The assumed risk existed and was clear to all, but the final result, unfortunately, was not decided on the ice, but rather shaped by the cold blade of the scalpel on an operating table, interrupting any hope of early tactical adaptation. Today, if we look at the Bell Center's blueprint, we have a roster in Montreal that intensely revolves around the youth, infinite breath, and electrifying speed of the talented Nick Suzuki, the scorer Cole Caulfield, and the powerful European prospect Juraj Slafkovsky. The entire team is sweating blood and learning daily to play a complex tactical system of fast puck control and possession, with a swift and lethal transition between the defensive zone and the attack.